You open your home to strangers every day. You clean the sheets, leave the keys, write a welcome note. You tell yourself people are mostly good. You trust the reviews, the verified profiles, the 5-star ratings, but sometimes the person who books your listing isn't who they say they are. And sometimes the worst thing isn't what your guest does to your home. It's what you find out they were doing inside it the whole time. My house is a 3-bedroom craftsman in northeast Portland. The kind of neighborhood with farmers markets on Sundays and coffee shops that don't have drive-thrus. I converted the ground floor guest suite into a listing. Private entrance, private bathroom, in a small kitchenette, clean, comfortable. I was proud of it. Marcus booked a 4-night stay on a Tuesday in October. His profile said he was a freelance photographer visiting for a project. Verified ID, 2 previous 5-star reviews. I had no reason to think twice. He checked in while I was at work. I got home around 6, made dinner, heard nothing from downstairs. Perfect guest, I thought. I went to bed early. The guest suite sits directly below my bedroom. Old craftsman bones mean old craftsman sounds. I can hear the pipes when someone runs the shower, the soft creak of the floorboards near the window when someone moves across them. That first night, around 2 a.m., I heard Marcus move. Not the normal movement of someone getting up for water. This was slow, deliberate, a long, steady creak from the floorboard directly below the foot of my bed, back and forth, the same spot over and over. I told myself he was probably just restless. Jet lag, maybe. Some people pace when they can't sleep. The creaking stopped after about 20 minutes. I pulled my blanket up and told myself to go back to sleep. I came home from work and he was sitting on the front porch steps when I pulled into the driveway, not on the guest side of the house, the front porch, sitting very still with no phone, no book, no coffee, just sitting there, watching the street. He stood when he saw me and smiled. The smile was fine, normal enough. "Marcus," he said, extending his hand. But when I got inside, I stood at my kitchen window and watched him go back to his seat on the porch steps. He sat down the same way he'd been sitting before, still facing the street, not doing anything. But I hadn't heard him leave that morning. My listing has a private entrance, but you can hear the door from the kitchen. I'd been home since 6 the night before. I'd worked from home. That morning, I hadn't heard him go out once. That night, the creaking came back. Same time, same spot, 2 a.m., directly below my bed. This time, it didn't stop after 20 minutes. I lay there listening to it for over an hour. Day 3, I checked the listing cameras. Marcus had been on the porch steps every night. The timestamps showed it clearly. 11 p.m., 1 a.m., 2:30 a.m. Always facing out, never on his phone. But on day 3, he knocked on the interior door. He knocked on it 3 times. Slow, measured. The way you knock on a door when you're not in a hurry, when you're not worried about the answer. I didn't answer it. I stood in my laundry room on the other side and waited. He knocked again after a 30-second pause. 3 times. Same rhythm. Then I heard his footsteps move away. But when I went to the front door, there was no one there. I checked the porch. Empty. I checked the driveway. His rental car was still parked at the curb. He was somewhere in the house. And he hadn't left through either entrance. My hands were shaking when I went back inside. I called my friend Dana and told her I was going to ask my guest to leave. As I was typing, I heard the guest suite door open and close from outside. His car engine started 2 minutes later. He came back at 11:45 p.m. He sat on the porch steps for 90 minutes before going inside. I filed a complaint through Airbnb that night. I told them I felt unsafe. They sent an automated message. They said a representative would follow up in 24 to 48 hours. His checkout was the next morning. 11 a.m. I counted the hours. At 6 a.m. on checkout day, I went downstairs to start prepping the suite for turnover. The door to the suite was standing open. His bags were gone. The bed was made. Not the way housekeeping makes a bed, but a specific, deliberate way. Corners tucked military tight. The welcome notepad on the desk. It was sitting in the center of the desk, facing the door. Something had been written on it, in very neat, very small handwriting. You sleep with your left arm over your face. You've done it every night. I dropped the notepad. My back hit the wall. The room was completely empty. I was outside in under a minute. I didn't grab my keys or my phone at first. I just needed to not be inside. I sat in my car in the driveway with the doors locked for 20 minutes. A board officer came by, took a report, said there was nothing actionable since the guest had checked out. I had a locksmith change every lock in my house that afternoon. But 2 weeks later, I was talking to my neighbor, Carol. The man who sat on the steps, she said. I thought he was your brother. I don't have a brother. He was always looking up, she said. Not at the street, up, at your bedroom window. I still don't know how he knew which side of the bed I sleep on after one night. My guest suite has no sight line to my bedroom. There's no window that connects them. That part I can't explain. I replaced every curtain in the house with blackout panels, the kind that let no light in and no light out. I check them every night before bed, every single night. And sometimes, when the house is very quiet and I'm almost asleep, I hear the floorboard below my bed creak once, just once, and I lie there with my left arm over my face, waiting for it to happen again. I run a 2-bedroom flat in Glasgow's West End, and I've been doing it for 3 years. Hosting wasn't something I planned. I inherited the flat from my aunt and couldn't afford to sell it and couldn't afford to maintain it on my salary. So I listed it and stayed in the smaller bedroom when guests booked the main room. Most of my guests were tourists. Glasgow has good museums, good music, good food. People came for the weekend, saw the city, left. My reviews were solid. 4.8 stars on over 60 bookings. Ryan booked the main room for 7 nights, starting on a Friday in February. His profile showed a Manchester address and a history of about 8 previous stays with decent reviews. He said he was in Glasgow for work. He arrived Friday evening with 1 bag, shook my hand, and was perfectly pleasant at first. Polite, quiet. He asked if there was a good pub nearby. I told him about the Aragon. He thanked me, and that was that. February in Glasgow means dark by 4 in the afternoon. The flat is on the 2nd floor of a sandstone tenement, the kind that's been standing since the 1890s and will probably outlast everyone alive today. The walls are thick enough to muffle most sound, but the hallway between the 2 bedrooms is narrow and shared. A 6-foot stretch of old laminate flooring that both doors open onto. By Sunday, I noticed Ryan wasn't leaving. Not for work, not for anything, as the flat is small enough that you feel another person's presence, even when they're behind a closed door. The particular stillness of someone on the other side of a wall. I'd hear him moving in the morning, the bathroom in use, the TV on low, but the front door never opened. By Monday, I was working from home, and by midday, the quality of the silence coming from his room had changed. It felt less like resting and more like waiting. Monday evening, I knocked on his door and asked if everything was all right. He opened it. He looked fine, completely fine. Calm, neutral expression, arms loose at his sides. Everything's great, he said. Why? I told him I just wanted to check in, that I hadn't seen him come or go. He smiled. A smile with no warmth behind it, just a mouth moving, and said he'd been working remotely from the room. Calls all day, very busy. You don't mind, do you? He said. It wasn't really a question. I said of course not. I went back to my room, but as I walked down the hallway, I had the distinct specific feeling of being watched from behind. I turned around. His door was closed. The hallway was empty. But that night at dinner, I heard him open his door and walk down the hallway and stop just outside my door. No knock, no sound after the footsteps, just the presence of someone standing on the other side of it. I sat very still at my small kitchen table and waited. After 3 minutes, he walked back to his room. By Wednesday, day 5 of 7, I had decided I wanted him gone. I messaged him through Airbnb to say I had a family situation and would need him to check out 2 days early. I offered a full refund of the remaining nights. He read the message. He didn't reply. I knocked on his door. He answered. I told him in person, as calmly as I could, that I needed the room back early due to a family emergency. He looked at me for a long moment. That's a shame, he said. I'm quite comfortable here. He closed the door without another word. He didn't leave. I heard him moving around in there all evening. I messaged Airbnb that night and explained I had a non-compliant guest refusing to vacate. They told me my options were limited since the booking was technically still active. They said to contact local authorities if I felt unsafe. By Thursday morning, I felt unsafe. I called the police. 2 officers came, spoke to Ryan through the door, and explained the situation. He opened the door for them, looking freshly showered and reasonable. He told them there had been a communication mix-up and that he would vacate by noon. The officers left. Noon came. He did not vacate. I stood outside my own front door in my coat and scarf at 12:30 on a Thursday afternoon because I did not want to be inside the flat with him alone. My hands were shaking. At 12:45 p.m., my front door opened and Ryan walked out with his bag. He stopped when he saw me standing in the close. He looked at me for a long moment. Not angry. That was the worst part. Not angry at all. Your door lock sticks, he said. 3rd key turn. You have to lift the handle. I figured that out on the first night. He walked past me and down the stairs. His footsteps echoed on the stone. I went inside and stood in the hallway. His door was open. The room was cleared, bag gone, nothing left behind. Clean. I moved to check the bathroom. My hand touched the doorframe and something on the inside of the wood caught my fingers. I looked down, scratched into the interior doorframe of my bathroom. At approximately shoulder height were 6 vertical lines, like tally marks, and below them I scratched with something sharp into the old wood. Not done yet. I left. Coat still on, bag not packed. I went to my colleague Fiona's flat and stayed there for 4 days. I hired a locksmith that afternoon, called him from Fiona's kitchen and paid extra for same-day service. New deadbolt, new chain, new door handle. He sent me photos when it was done. I reported Ryan's profile to Airbnb with photos of the damage. His account was eventually suspended, though it took 11 days. 11 days in which he could have booked another host's home. A month later, I posted about the experience in a Scottish Airbnb host forum online. 3 responses came in within 2 days. 2 were from hosts in Edinburgh, One was from a woman in Liverpool. Same description, same type of guest, same pattern. Books a room, doesn't leave the space, or doesn't go out, refuses early checkout, calm when confronted, dangerously calm. The Edinburgh hosts both mentioned the feeling of being watched through the door. The Liverpool host said hers had rearranged furniture in the room and denied it. None of them had the same guest name, different profiles, different photos, but the behavior, beat for beat, was identical. The Liverpool host had found something in her room too, not scratched into the wood, written on a piece of her own notepaper, left tucked under the mattress. She wouldn't say what it said in the forum, just that she'd called the police and that she'd moved out of her property 6 weeks later and hadn't gone back. I still don't know if it was the same person. I don't know how many profiles he had. I don't know which city he's in now, or whose hallway he's standing outside at night. That was 8 months ago. I still host. I can't afford not to, but I installed a secondary latch on my bedroom door that only locks from the inside. A latch I bought specifically because it cannot be opened without waking me up. And sometimes in the morning, when I'm making tea, I look down the hallway and I think about what he said on the stairs. Third key turn, you have to lift the handle. I figured that out on the first night. And I wonder what else he figured out. That first night, before I knew to be afraid. My name is Petra, and I want to be honest about something up front. I was a good host. I kept my listing immaculate. Fresh flowers on the entry table. Locally sourced coffee pods in the kitchen. A handwritten card with my recommendations for the city. Thermal baths, ruin bars, the riverside at sunset. I had over 200 reviews and a Superhost badge I was genuinely proud of. Hosting was not just income for me. It was something I believed in. The idea of opening your home to the world. My property was a 2-bedroom apartment in District 7, the old Jewish quarter, the part of Budapest that tourists fall in love with. High ceilings, original parquet floors, tall windows overlooking a courtyard. I lived in the smaller bedroom. The larger one I listed. I was home most evenings. I considered myself present but unobtrusive, the perfect host. For 18 months, that's what I was. Then in September, a water pipe burst in the wall behind my guest bathroom, and I found out what my apartment had actually been. The building dates to 1912. 7 floors, 42 units. The kind of Budapest building with an iron-railed lift and corridors that smell of plaster and old wood. My apartment was on the 4th floor. I'd bought it 5 years earlier and renovated it myself. New kitchen, new bathroom tiles, fresh plaster on every wall. I thought I knew every centimeter of it. The pipe burst on a Sunday morning while I had no guests. I heard the sound. A low groan in the wall, followed by a hiss. And then water began seeping through the grout of the bathroom tiles. I called an emergency plumber. He came within 2 hours, cut an access panel through the bathroom wall to reach the pipe. The access panel opened into a space I did not know existed. The plumber pulled back the panel and shone his torch inside and went very quiet. I asked him what was wrong. He stepped back from the opening without saying anything and gestured for me to look. Behind my bathroom wall was a narrow cavity, perhaps 40 centimeters wide, running the full height of the room. Old buildings in this part of Budapest sometimes have these: structural gaps, service corridors, unused voids between renovated interiors and original walls. The renovation that turned the building into residential units in the 1990s had sealed dozens of them off behind new plasterwork. I knew this academically. I'd never thought about what was inside mine. The torch beam swept across the cavity floor. There was a sleeping bag, thin, compressed, shaped to a body that had lain in it many times. Beside it, a water bottle, an empty food wrapper, a small battery-powered lantern, the cheap kind you can buy at any petrol station. Someone had been living in my wall. My first thought, I'm ashamed to say it, but it was my first thought, was that it was a homeless person who had found a way into the building's infrastructure. A tragedy, not a threat. Something that had happened before I owned the apartment. But then the plumber moved the torch, and I saw the rest. The sleeping bag had been recently used. The plumber touched the fabric and looked at me, and I could see in his face that he already knew. It wasn't cold. It wasn't stiff. It had the particular limpness of something that had held body heat recently and hadn't yet fully released it. The water bottle was half full. The food wrappers, there were 3 of them, were from a bakery chain that only opened in our district 18 months ago. Whoever had been in that cavity had been there for at least 18 months. The entire time I had been running my listing. The entire time I had been welcoming strangers into my home, showing them the thermal baths and the ruin bars, writing them handwritten cards. I sat down on the bathroom floor. I don't remember deciding to sit. I was just suddenly on the floor. The plumber began describing access points. There was an iron grate at the base of the cavity, he said, original to the building, that opened into a service corridor in the basement. It had no lock. It had never needed one because everyone assumed the cavity itself was sealed. He was saying this calmly, practically, the way a person describes a technical problem. I was trying to understand the timeline. My listing had been active for 18 months. During that time, 112 separate guest bookings had taken place. Couples, solo travelers, a woman with her daughter, a family from Japan who left me a review that said, felt like a home. All of them had slept 6 feet from a wall that had someone living inside it. I thought about the sounds I'd explained away. Water running at odd hours. I assumed guests. Creaking. Old building, I always said. A smell in the guest bathroom I couldn't place and had the tiles re-cleaned twice. The plumber found the source immediately. The cavity had no ventilation. I thought about my guests' reviews. Every one of them had mentioned how peaceful it was, how quiet, what a sanctuary. The torch beam caught something else near the top of the cavity. I made myself look. At approximately eye level, with someone sitting in the sleeping bag, there were small holes in the plasterwork. Precise, neat holes, no bigger than a fingertip. I didn't understand what they were at first. The plumber moved the torch to the other side. He showed me where the holes emerged. They came through into the ventilation grill at the base of the guest bedroom wall. From inside the cavity, sitting in the sleeping bag, you had a direct sight line into the lower portion of the guest bedroom. Not the full room, not the bed, but the floor space near the door. The area where a person stands when they enter, when they undress, when they walk between the bed and the bathroom in the night. The plumber picked up something from beside the sleeping bag that I hadn't noticed before. He held the torch over it. It was a notebook, spiral bound, cheap, the kind students use. He opened the first page and held the torch steady. It was a log, dates down the left column. On the right side, in small, neat handwriting, descriptions. Not names. My guest names weren't listed. Just details, physical descriptions, what they were wearing, what time they turned the light off, whether they were alone, whether they spoke in their sleep. The entries went back 18 months. There were pages and pages of them. The most recent entry was dated 2 days before the pipe burst. I had had guests 2 days ago, a young couple from Amsterdam. I don't know where the person who wrote that notebook is now. I left the apartment that afternoon and didn't return for 11 days. The police came. They collected the notebook, the sleeping bag, the lantern. They took photographs. They would review the evidence. They would be in touch. The iron grate in the basement was welded shut. The cavity was filled with concrete. My bathroom was retiled. I deactivated my Airbnb listing the same day the police came. I never reactivated it. I contacted every guest I could reach through the Airbnb messaging system. I wrote a careful message explaining that a building maintenance issue had revealed a structural problem in the property, that I wanted to make them aware, and that I was sorry for any distress this might cause. I didn't describe what had been found. I didn't know how to. 11 guests responded. Most were confused, politely concerned. 2 were upset. One response stopped me completely. It was from a woman who had stayed alone for 3 nights, about 8 months before the cavity was discovered. Her response was 3 sentences long. Artem, she said, I know something was wrong in that apartment. I could feel it the whole time. I didn't sleep for 3 nights, and I've never been able to explain why. And if you're telling me something was actually there, I don't want to know what it was. She'd left me a 5-star review. She had written, Cozy and central. Petra is a wonderful host. She had known, in the way your body knows things before your mind catches up. And she had said nothing because she had no words for it. Because there are no words for the feeling of being watched in a room where you're supposed to be alone. I think about her often. I think about all of them. I still live in the apartment. I had nowhere else to go. The cavity is concrete now. I know because I watched them fill it. But old buildings breathe, and sometimes late at night, when the city goes quiet and the courtyard below my windows is still, I hear something from behind the bathroom wall. A settling, a shift. The sound of a building more than a century old adjusting to the cold. I know that's what it is. I know, but I don't sleep with the guest bedroom door open anymore. And every morning, without fail, I check the ventilation grill. Every morning, without fail. Because I know now that a home can have a life inside it you never suspected. And I know now that peaceful and safe are not the same thing.